it's not quite a done deal yet, but I think we can say with some confidence at this point that Milos Kerkez is Liverpool's first choice target in the left back position this summer. It's my understanding, as I record this video right now, that no official offer has yet gone into Bournemouth, but that can change very quickly. And the reason I may be expected to, maybe even before this video goes out, is because there are outline talks ongoing between Bournemouth and Liverpool. There has been some contact there to just size up a deal and see what that would be like. And the next thing that comes after those outline talks is generally an official offer and then some movement on that front. So we'll see how things progress in terms of that. But I think the question I want to ask at this point is, why are Liverpool in for Kerkez? Why do they know, despite the fact that Bournemouth have put a £45 million price tag on his head, why are they still interested? Why do they think he's an ideal fit for what Arne Slot wants to do? That's the question I wanted to ask in this video. So, as usual, taking a dig into the numbers and having a look at what kind of player he is, what his strengths are, what maybe his weaknesses are, what areas he's already good at, what areas he can improve in. And so I want to go through those now and really examine them and ask why Liverpool are willing to pay something similar, at least to £45 million to get Kerkez in this summer. So because he's a defender, I think the sensible place to start is with his defending. And a good starting point with this actually is the fact that Bournemouth are no slouches defensively. He's part of a very, very good unit there. They were the 6th best defence in the Premier League last season, and the underlying numbers supported that roughly, with the 8th best expected goals against, and he was a big part of that. He's by no means being carried in that defence, so he can be part of a good collective unit. We've seen that as evidence from Bournemouth's performances this season. But in terms of the individual, now, I always say don't be wary of statistics around defending. A lot of them are volume statistics, so the weaker sides, you get to see more defending to do, so those players show up higher in the defensive statistics. So we don't really necessarily want to look at those defensive stats. Instead, I'm going to start out with a comparison with Andy Robertson in terms of the success of the defensive action. So how frequently do you come out of a tackle having won it? How frequently do you come out of a challenge having won it? And I think this makes for pretty interesting reading, not least because that comparison is there with Robertson as well, which we know it would effectively be the man he's replacing. So if you have a look at these statistics now, you can see Kerkez wins a high percentage of his challenges. This is over the last season, by the way. He won a high percentage of his challenges, 64.6% to 54.9%. A high percentage of his tackles, 55.4% to 47.7%. And even aerial duels he's stronger in. He's not the biggest, but even in aerial duels he's stronger, 34.4% to 12.5%. So I'd say that is a fairly impressive performance, not least because as much stick Robertson got, and I thought it was a bit unfair at times. I think he had a slow start to the season, but built into it, and ultimately ended up being the starting left back for a side that absolutely strolled the Premier League. So how bad can he have been? And yet Kerkez is showing up more impressively than him in those aspects, which I think is impressive. And I've also got a map here actually which kind of supports how good he is in these challenges all across the pitch. And this is the ground challenges across a season that they've contested. So green is a win and red is a loss. And you can see again, Kerkez clearly, he's winning a lot more of them. He's involved in a lot more of them. He does more defending as a Bournemouth player than he maybe would at Liverpool, as Robertson proves there. But I think you can see the balance of the green v red. He's winning a higher percentage of those ground challenges. He's getting about. He's getting involved in tackles a lot more, but he's winning a lot more of them. So I think that shows to me a good defender, someone who's hard to beat. I mean, anyone who's watched him, I always say with these videos, it's got to be combined with the eye test. Go and watch compilations of him. Go and see what type of player he is. And I think that kind of stands it up. And every time I've watched him, a good defender, not easily beaten by his winger, and can always get back in, but he's got the energy to get around and make those challenges as well. And I think it's fair to say, I'd say that the criticism of Robertson at times has been over the top, but I would also say, at times he has been beaten this season in a way that he maybe wouldn't have 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe can't get around the pitch to make the challenges as easily as they used to, and then, as I say, getting out-muscled, maybe outpaced a little bit by attackers. So Kerkez, I think, is showing that he's got potential to be an upgrade in that position in the defensive aspects of the game. But of course, when you're playing for Liverpool, you've got to be so much more than that. But I always say for fullbacks as well, I always remember thinking when Aaron Wan-Bissaka signed for Manchester United that wasn't going to be a successful move, because I hadn't seen enough from him in terms of his quality going forward. He's maybe shown actually a bit more of that now he's at West Ham, but it didn't, not really enough to make you think he would have been a standout for Manchester United. So, fullback who's playing for Liverpool, or certainly this Liverpool team, they've got to be very, very good going forward. Even if they can lock down their opposite winger, they've got to offer something going the other way as well. So in terms of how we judge that, I'm going to start with a chart that kind of shows and compares to other Premier League fullbacks in terms of creating and dribbling, because that's going to be the job up and down that flank. And you can see Kerkez on this chart here. Just for comparison, by the way, Robertson is circled red on this, so you can compare them both, and you see, and they're basically both roughly equally creative last season, but the big difference maybe is that Kerkez is a slightly keener dribbler than Robbo. He's getting up and down a little bit more. He's, I think he's kind of, again, when you watch him, you see that he wants to dribble, he wants to drive forward. He's someone who brings progression with the ball at his feet, which I would say is comparable maybe to a Conor Bradley, maybe like a Frimpong as well. Very different to Trent Alexander-Arnold, who will progress it with his passing. So you can see keen in dribbling, quite creative. And in fact, what's interesting actually is that Robertson used to do a lot more of that back in his pomp, in his better years as well. He only had 7 successful dribbles this season, but you go back to the 1920 season and he had 22, so that shows you that's an area of his game that's dropping away. But Kerkez seems to be going from strength to strength in this aspect, and would instantly bring that back in terms of ball carrying up that left-hand side for Liverpool. So that would be very, very useful for Liverpool, clearly. And they're in the same ballpark roughly as well for getting shots and getting decent shots off as well. Not a kind of massive difference there. So that's just something that's worth looking at. You're not necessarily, I don't think Arne Slot is too fussed about his fullbacks getting shots away and getting into positions to get shots, but it's something I think that's maybe worth noting there, that Kerkez is capable of that, and a couple of goals from this season that we've seen as well. So it just adds more threat. And now talking about threat, let's have a look at expected threat as well, because again, this is another aspect of attacking, or a good way of measuring threat that can be generated by the players as well. So anytime that they move their team into a more dangerous area of the pitch or move them forward, they get marks for this basically. So it can either be through a pass or a carry. They'll get marks for that under expected threat. So let's see how they compare in terms of that. And I'll bring up these charts now. Now you might notice almost immediately that Alexander-Arnold is an absolute freak who Liverpool are going to struggle to replace. I mean, I've said that enough times really, haven't I? He's absolutely out on his own in terms of fullback, in terms of what he can do creatively and getting the team into more dangerous positions, particularly with his passing. But Kerkez is not a million miles away. He's 17th. He's up there in terms of all Premier League fullbacks last season. 17th is not too bad. Of course, Robertson's slightly higher than him. He's up in 6th for expected threat generated from fullback, which again shows you, all the criticism he's had this season, he's still able to offer threat to this Liverpool team. He can get them into positions. He can get them into more dangerous positions. He's he's canny with the ball at his feet. He's not too bad a dribbler, even if he's not as good as he used to be. So he's still very good in terms of generating expected threat. But Kerkez, not a million miles off from him. And what I think is my favourite thing about this actually is I did a video on Kerkez back in November, and he was 32nd in this regard. So he's made a jump immediately. We can see that. We can see kind of, I expressed a concern when I did that video in November about the threat he was generating, that we'd need to see more of him on the attacking side of the game. Well, he's already gone from 32nd to 17th. We're seeing that clear development from him, which I think is really exciting. And, you're going to get that with young players. He is 21 years old, isn't he? So I think we're seeing that clear jump in front of our eyes there. So he's made that jump last season in terms of the threat that he generates, and that's really promising. And look, he ended up the Premier League season, he ended up with 2 goals and 6 assists, so 8 goal contributions. Robertson just the 1 assist in the Premier League. Now, he was a little bit unlucky just to get that, but I think it shows you really that, Kerkez is going one way and maybe Robertson's going the other in terms of the development around those attacking numbers. And we'll see from Kerkez, this tends to come as they get a bit older. You need that quality. You can't just, that's kind of inbuilt, and you tend to have that. That's tough to develop. But what he will develop, and alongside the quality he's already got, I think, is a bit of composure around the box, picking the right cross, picking the right time to cross and the timings. So that'll be something he can improve on. But we're already seeing development in terms of his attacking game there, which is, as I say, I think is exciting, particularly if he comes to Liverpool. I mean, it helps in terms of his creativity. He ranked second in the Premier League last season for crosses into the penalty area with 27. 10th in all top 5 European leagues in that mark as well. So he's right up there as a creative fullback. And Robertson, he didn't feature in kind of the top 10 there, but he was top 10 in the 1920 season and the 2021 season. So what you're seeing here clearly is that it's almost like a Robertson regen, isn't it? A younger version of Robertson that's ready to come in and have that same development he did. And I think that's the most exciting aspect about this signing, really, or theoretically about this signing who Liverpool hope to make. So I guess if you want a nice summary of all of that, just to have a look at the comparison between the two, here's a wagon wheel, really, that shows you kind of all the aspects of the game all together. And you can see, Robertson stronger on the attacking underlying numbers. So as I say, maybe a bit unlucky to not get better numbers delivered in terms of assists and goals last season. And he is better in possession at the moment. And Kerkez, clearly, I think we can see showing stronger in the defences, the defensive aspects. I think the gap between the two on both the defence and the attack can maybe be explained by the teams that they play for. As I say, Bournemouth defending more, Liverpool having more of the ball, more chances to attack. But what I can see is they're not a million miles away from each other in certain aspects. And I think we're seeing that development in Kerkez. He's getting better in certain aspects. He's catching up to Robertson. And then if you put him in the Liverpool team, it could be the ingredient you need, really, for him to go to the next level, really, and develop. And I think, you can see he may be already a better left back than Andy Robertson. He's certainly, I'd say, in the next 2 to 3 years going to be that. So I think that's a good thing to note about his numbers. And another thing as well that I think, just before I kind of sign off on this, is to talk about the fact that he's got absolutely electric pace. He gets up and down at real speed. He's also got a relentless engine on him as well. And I just think that's so useful. Robertson not quite as quick as he used to be, not quite as able to go on the overlap as frequently. And I just think that's so helpful in terms of dragging players away from the wingers and helping out create space for them. So to have Kerkez doing that on one side, it will instantly give you something more on the left-hand side, be that Diaz, Gakpo, whoever it ends up being down that left next season, similarly to what you hope will happen with Frimpong down the right and Conor Bradley down the right, to help Mo Salah out a little bit more and unlock a bit more space for him. So that's, an important aspect, really, is the physical quality that he's going to bring to the team. And beyond that as well, he also played 38 out of 38 Premier League games last season. So he's incredibly robust. So you can rely on him to be available, which is really helpful. Because, again, Robertson's starting to pick up more injuries. He's had to be rotated with Tsimikas quite a bit, hasn't he, to avoid that. So Kerkez can come in and whenever you need him, he's going to be ready. So that's always an appealing aspect, isn't it? Because we know the best ability in any footballer is availability. So that is an important thing, I think, to note. So I think, really, in summary, I think we're looking at a player here who could lock down that left-back spot for Liverpool for the next 10 years if they can get this deal over the line. And there should be confidence that they will, because, as I say, they've gone into this knowing how much they'll have to pay. The player is absolutely desperate to come, which again is another appealing aspect about this deal. So I think one to get excited about, but we'll wait for that all to be done. We'll wait for the deal to be agreed. But I think what we're seeing here is that this could be a very good signing for Liverpool. So I will wrap it up there anyway. Do let me know your thoughts on Kerkez in the comments. Do you think he'd be a good signing? How do you think he's going to fit into this team? And do you think those numbers can get even better in a better team? Do let me know your thoughts on that. And I'll wrap it up there and say I'll see you guys very soon.